Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Von Rudenberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Canestrino.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Sims is not here. Councilmember Pataglia.
Here.
Mayor LaBrus.
Here.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec. Notice having been published according to law with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall.
Okay, would everybody please rise for the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. With that, we'll move right to the agenda. Number one.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, invited guests. This is the agenda for the Committee of a Whole for July 22nd, 2019. First is the recycling pickup schedule, bottles and cans. Mike Serbikian is here, and he will speak to us with a little update.
Okay, Mike, you're on.
Evening, Mayor and Council.
How are you?
So I understand the recycling. There's leftover recycling from the opposite source that's being picked up. So this week we're collecting newspaper and cardboard, and so from the south moving north, you're going to start seeing the bottles come out because the residents are used to that. I will give you the pros that have came through thus far. The recycling costs have dropped, I believe, $2,000 within the first month. Secondly, the recycling or the sorting facility, they greatly appreciate the cleaner recycling. On top of, we're less likely to lose that sorting facility. You know, dirty recycling comes in, and it's a big issue. As I stated the first time I spoke here, there are going to be growing pains. You know, the burden has to fall on the city as well as the residents for, you know, storing the bottles where we can then pick it up kind of in a more efficient manner. We have made some accommodations along the way. Pre-planned, we planned on getting Main Street, Anderson, as well as the condos and apartments. We thus then spread it out to some other businesses as well that produce a high volume of cardboard or bottles and cans. As well, we have the recycling facility that's open. Mr. Nglima has been talking about bringing on a part-time worker to extend the hours. We understand that most workers, you know, work the 9 to 5. Our facility is open officially 8 to 4. The gate does open right after 7 o'clock in the morning. We are also open Saturdays for residents to bring in bottles, cans, electronics, yard waste, as well as corrugated paper and newsletter as well.
A couple of things I'd like to add, thanks Mike, is that I think that we're pretty ambitious of starting this at the height of recycling, because people are using more bottles and cans now than they ever are.
Sure.
Because
Barbecue time.
I drank 12 bottles of water on Saturday, so that's 12 extra bottles. I normally wouldn't be drinking that much water. So we're at the height of capacity here. So I would urge the council, let's let this play out till probably November and let it kind of cycle through, and let's see. And these guys, I met with Joe, and Mike has met with Joe with real frequency. We keep tweaking the system to provide better service to people, and this is a learning curve. We've never really done it this way before, but like everything else, we're trying to improve the service to the residents. There's going to be some growing pains. Once in a while, there'll even be a few mistakes, but that's the nature of the beast. But not trying, I think, is the big mistake. So I would urge the council to stay the path at this point. And if we really get to a dead end, I'll be the first to pull that trigger, but I'd really like you to consider fielding these for now.
But when you talk about saving, how much money we really saving a month total?
We used to earn $60,000 for recycling. Then it cost us almost $60,000. So we're now, as Mike pointed out, providing clean separation of our bottles and cans, so we will start to get some money back, because if they find a truckload that's mixed with garbage and stuff, they just flag the whole thing and you don't get any credit for it.
Right.
So what we're trying to do at this point, I'd like to just get to neutral in the cost of recycling. We didn't gain any money, but we didn't lose any money. I'd be happy with that right this minute, because right now, because of our conditions with China, there is no purchase.
Nobody's buying.
Nobody's buying.
Okay, so now, you say that, for instance, the saving right now, or what the city gaining is $2,000?
No, the gaining so far, 2,000 for the month. Not, we haven't calculated into July yet, so for the month of June so far.
So, but with all the headaches that we got with the residents, you think it's worth it, the $2,000?
It's the beginning.
My proposal would be, let's do every other week with the paper and keep the
I was just
others
gonna say
once a
that.
week. There's no way. I see my neighbors, and I know it's the summer, it's outrageous what's going on. And, you know, we're encouraging people to recycle. Some people have more recycling than they have regular garbage. So,
In the
I-
summertime, you would.
What would the
I say all
savings
year round, we
be?
drink, in my house, I'm sorry, but especially when my grandkids are over, we'd go through bottles of water like crazy. I think, my personal opinion is, we wanna start slow, let's keep the paper, cardboard every other, and let's go back to once a week.
What
That's
would
what
the-
I would ask.
What would the savings be if it was every other week cardboard only, or even once a month or something?
I do not have those questions. I don't have the answers to those questions. So my suggestion is, if you could just email me your questions, I'll meet with Joe and Mike, and
Even if it's the
and we'll
whole
get
thing,
back.
for $24,000 a
My,
year, it's
my
not
question
worth
is, my
it.
confusion is, what is the difference between the recycling as far as being pure, whether you did it every week or every 2 weeks?
So it's every week, or so if we were to do bottle every week,
Right.
where we would have a very hard choice to sort it the way that we are sorting it, and then we would place a bigger burden on the residents. We'd be putting stickers on everything and still leaving it. So there still would be bottles out and hoping that the residents would pick it up. If not, then we would have to come around with a garbage truck and pick it up as trash and the such. Also, to another, if it keeps being dirty, something else to consider too is our vehicles. So our vehicles, as of right now, currently, we are on our spare. You know, they're all running out. We have 3 trucks out. It's a big stress to put on, especially during the summertime. The heat really works with the vehicles, and we're keeping our manpower, you know, right above where we should be. You know, for summer we're a little lower than the highest that we've ever had. But to continue on, that's another cost to look at. 3 more men, a whole crew, I should say, and another vehicle possibly
How
as
come
well.
we were doing it before we come with a new way?
So our trucks, the ones that we purchased and then had us replaced with, those trucks were still, we can keep them on the road for more than 2-3 days. We have a truck, vehicles number 218. We put it out. It broke down. The good part with the recycling the way it was is it was a bottle truck. The other bottle truck was able to come in and finish the route. If we were to continue on the way it was that day, and we had everything out together, we would go, the bottle truck would carry on, go forth, but part of that load would be mixed with paper. We would dump that at a higher cost as well.
Okay.
My concern is the amounts. I mean, I saw like
We live on the same
2,
block.
3 cans of bottles and
I get it.
cans. in
Like I
front of
said, we're
the
at
house.
the all-time height. We'll let this play out. I'll meet with these guys. I'll get back to you. Any questions you have about recycling, please send them to me so I can answer them appropriately, and I'll send them back, because
What
we
if,
only
what
have one
if
week
the
in a month.
pickup was every week and we stored it and did our thing with it and then got rid of it?
I don't know.
Feasible? Is there
Well,
a dumpster? I don't know.
I'll meet with these guys and we'll
Couple
figure this out.
dumpsters?
Yeah, Ted, I think we have to do something.
I understand.
There's
least
too
through the
many
warm
complaints,
season.
and it's just, it's really a nightmare.
Last week with the bottles, the night before it stormed, there was some considerable wind. The entrance to Vernon Brook Street looked like a recycling center underground. It was like bottles everywhere, glass everywhere.
And we had the holiday, the 4th of July on a Thursday,
Yeah.
and I noticed some residents had missed. We tried to
Yeah.
accommodate it the next
Well, I
day
was confused.
thereafter.
I didn't know, did you pick up on Thursday?
We picked up on Thursday.
Hey, I didn't put it out. I
Uh,
didn't think.
In my own town, I skipped my own recycling date that day.
Let's do this. Got 2 residents here who I've known for a long time. What's your feeling on this You like it cardboard every 2 weeks and bottles every 2 weeks? Are you all right with that?
I'm fine with the way the new system.
With the new system, you don't have an issue with it, but you don't have a lot of
How
garbage.
many people in your house?
It's just you two.
Huh?
No.
So, but like for instance, I have a rental unit, right? It's 4-family house. I carry already 2-3 bags of recyclable to Green Street. Before we don't have that problem, but now in the summer, people drinking, sometimes they got barbecues or whatever, and they got more bottles.
What I don't want
beer.
is for the people to feel like they're losing. Yeah, we're saying we're leveling taxes, but if you're taking a
We don't want
service
to look
away
like
where
we're
people have to
removing
leave their house to
services
go to
that we
recycle.
provide. I guess.
Or if we do like a summer schedule, like we do it we do
Understood.
2 pickups, so if we do recycling every
I
week
will
in
meet with
summer.
them this week.
Let's
See if we can,
let's
Yeah,
meet, let's
Send
meet
me your
halfway there
emails and
somewhere.
I'll get your response back.
because
We'll
we're
make
not
the
getting the
change.
positive of doing the twice a week garbage,
Understand.
because all they're focusing on is, look what you did, you took away our service, and that's what
Understood.
we're hearing.
Okay, next.
Next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Good
Appreciate
luck
it.
tomorrow. Next is resident-only parking. This issue came up that because of the hospital, the parking is spilling out over to Second Street and over by the Baptist church there. So the suggestion was to create streets and areas claimed to be, I live in the area of Parker, so we need to tighten the ordinance that we can control this because,
By Parker or Hillers?
well, it's Hillis, but the example was everybody lives near somebody and they're
Yeah,
saying, well,
yeah.
I'm a resident, so I should get coverage. So what we're trying to do is to redefine this ordinance for residents so we can take care of the residents in the area instead of having residents of the area, residents of listed streets. We need to define what those streets are because everybody, nothing against the residents of the city of Hackensack, but on every occasion I can think of,
Well-
somebody gets up to the microphone and says, I live in Hackensack, and they tell you how many years they are. Well, they also tell you what street they live on and what those conditions are. So
Well, I
we're-
forgot to read the article that is in the paper today. Other cities, they got the same kind of problem. You got some people, they are leaving the cars and they live in another town because they take the train or they take the buses. So there should be like maybe a sticker or something that say you can park there for 3 hours. But you got some people that drop the car 8 o'clock and they come back 6 o'clock. And the car is parked in front of your house for the whole day. And it's people, they don't live in town.
Yeah.
So look at the article, or I'll bring you the article tomorrow, and then you're gonna see how the other cities they are doing with this particular problem. Because sometimes you move and you put the stickers or the sign in this particular block, then they go to the next block. They walk a little bit more, but they let the car for the whole day.
Yeah, but I think we're not saying we're not gonna do this. All we're saying is.
We're gonna
that
define the streets
We're gonna
that
define the
we're gonna-
streets, not the areas.
If I may,
There's no such thing here as area. We don't talk about areas.
Yeah,
And
but
people
why-
say, oh, I live 3 blocks away. I'm in that area. I want to stick there. No.
if I can clarify, maybe I can, kind of cut through this. The way that the ordinance is intended to read is that there are various residential parking areas that have enumerated streets. And if you are a resident of those enumerated streets, you get a parking permit.
Right.
That's the way it is intended to read.
Just for
that-
parking on those
For
streets.
parking on those streets. So it might say, there's a residential parking area on River Street.
And they're
you know,
color-coordinated.
and so you're supposed to be living on River Street. And that's the way the ordinance reads now. But somebody could conceivably interpret it the way that it is written, as if you live in the area of River Street, you could get a parking permit. Now, I was prepared to issue a legal opinion saying, no, that's not the way the ordinance should be interpreted. But nonetheless, just because people looking in the code book, we want them to be comfortable that they fully understand what is in the code and perhaps not misperceive it, we decided to make a change to make it crystal clear that you have to be in one of the streets specifically listed, not on an adjacent street, not in a nearby street. So it is really just a clarification for the public. It doesn't really change the substantive nature of the of that part of the city code. So it's just to make it clear, because people can interpret things differently, and we just want to shut the door on anybody making that argument. But we wouldn't now, if someone came in and there was a parking, a residential parking zone on River Street and said, well, I live, across from River Street, I should have a permit because I'm in the area. We would deny it now. We would be within our rights under the ordinance to deny it now. We're just making it clear to the public that's, you have to be in the enumerated streets and the enumerated zones to get your parking permit. That's it.
But to Leo's point, if a particular street or area feels that they've now become overburdened, that, okay, now that we've made some of these resident only, people are moving a block or more in, and now they're finding their streets. How does an individual, how do citizens come forward and request that their street, what's the process?
We have done that. I mean, there have
I
been,
know we
since
have, but I'm
I've
saying-
gotten here.
So the
You have
public
traffic-
understands.
You have traffic identified that people are parking there from the hospital.
But if I'm the person on that street, what do? I complain to who?
You call City Hall, you
Okay.
call
Well,
traffic.
City Hall, they're referred to the police department.
Right.
If they can prove that they are
I
residents
mean,
through the
if the
criteria.
guy across the street is parking in front of your house, you have no complaint.
Right.
No, don't complain at
But
all.
if you
Right.
catch a guy from the work,
But,
you see him getting out in his scrubs and you walk into the hospital, you know he's a hospital employee.
Or sometimes they walk to a train, or
Right, to the
sometimes they
train or
walk
the
to the
bus.
buses.
Right.
Now, especially in Hackensack, now we got the train, we got the buses. People, they park the car the whole day in front of your house.
But
So if we put a sign that say limit 3 hours, then
I'm
the
gonna-
person gets stopped because he's in New York and the
Right, but we're saying, Leo, you can still do that if you follow this process. So if you feel that's happening in your street, you make the recommendation to the city manager, he has the traffic people look at it, and then that becomes one of the listed streets. Yes, Steve, then we would have to add that to the listed streets.
That's right. I mean, just like we do for a handicap parking area, right? If we need to add a handicap parking
Right.
spot, we'll do an ordinance. If we want to add or remove streets from an existing residential permit area, easy enough to do. I mean, obviously, it'll take 2 meetings. Or if we want to add a whole new residential parking zone. I mean, we recently changed it, a few months back, we changed it so college students could get residential parking permits if they
These-
qualified. So we've made changes to this ordinance, and, we just need direction if there's some basis that the council wants to see changes.
90+% of these cars are employees of the hospital.
Yes, they are.
Every employee at Hackensack University Medical Center gets a designated parking spot somewhere, not the street.
Right, whether
So
they choose to
it might be in our
utilize it.
best interest to reach out to Hackensack University Medical Center and say, hey, because we can start, because they have the numbers, the plate numbers, and if we start giving plate numbers, and I'm not going to get into legalities or anything here, to the medical center and say, hey, your people are parking on the street and they have a parking spot, work it from the inside out, because that would alleviate a lot of the problem. Because the people don't want to be shuttled, right? So they'd rather walk 3 blocks.
The other thing that it also identifies and kind of highlights for me is that we still don't have our parking rates at the area figures, because it's cheaper to park in Hackensack than it's cheaper to park in a lot of these other towns.
Yeah.
So we need to, we have our reasons, I understand that.
We're getting there.
But we're getting there,
We're
but
getting there.
we're still a good commodity for parking compared to other
yeah.
municipalities.
So
I
the other
agree.
town, they enforcing the rules.
But we didn't want to
Right,
bang them
right.
over the head to everybody
Right.
at one time. You got to raise
Completely
it
understand the
gradually.
logic, but
Right.
it does kind of just take a highlighter and just underline that little condition
Yep.
that we're trying to get to, but we will.
But I would
It
definitely
takes
get the
time.
hospital involved as well,
Yes,
because
sir.
those people shouldn't even be parking there. They all have parking spots.
And I think with more of these new license plate readers that we have, that we're purchasing for the traffic folks, it's much easier for them to know who's been there 2 hours or not.
Correct,
So that, I think, is a way, we'll get better enforcement that way,
absolutely. The new bus shelter installation,
Wait, we missed the floodplain, no?
pardon me?
The floodplain ordinance?
Oh, I'm sorry, the floodplain ordinance.
I can-
Freudian slip. Steve, you're up.
Yeah, considering I had to drive through about 8 floods to get here,
Pretend I'm not here.
and golf ball sized hail. So, and we do have the revised, correct, the version, so,
That's the separate sheet that I gave you.
okay. So, in our city code, we have chapter 89, which deals with flood hazard areas. And that was adopted in the 1980s and amended in the 1990s. That dealt with various requirements for construction, for permitting, for, dealing with properties that are in areas that tend to flood. Over time, our understanding of flooding and the damage it causes has grown. And as a result of that, there is a regular evaluation process that is done with the federal government and the state government to map out areas where there's certain flooding at certain levels, and also to update the best practices that a community should have for mitigating flooding, preventing flooding, making sure that construction is, considers flooding when you decide to approve a permit for a development. And so the state of New Jersey and the Federal Emergency Management Administration have directed that municipalities that want to be able to be eligible for their residents to buy flood insurance should update their ordinances, should update their flood maps. And so this is part of that process. So this comes from the state and federal government, and what they said is, hey, look, you need to amend your ordinances because they haven't been revised in nearly 20 years if you want to continue to have us offer your residents flood insurance. I think that's something the council would like to see. So essentially, we have proposed an amended floodplain ordinance that is based upon a model that the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection has recommended. This was on the agenda last week. However, we actually sent it to NJDEP for comments, and we received them late in the day today, and they asked for a few minor changes. So I made those changes so that the version that you'll be voting on for first reading today has been reviewed and approved by the appropriate officials at NJDEP to confirm that it will be in compliance with FEMA regulations. So once we adopt this, we send it to the state. I think the deadline is August 28th, so at our next meeting we would adopt it. And then we are in compliance with all the requirements. Our flood ordinances meet best practices, and it allows us again to remain in the flood insurance program. So this is truly a necessity for the council to act upon today to move forward with, now that we have official word from NJDEP that our form of ordinance is acceptable to them.
Well, in a nutshell, Steve, I'd like to know what changed.
Well, what I can tell you is that if you give me a second, I will. I mean, there were probably 100 different changes to things. I mean, first of all, the maps have changed, right? So there was a process and there was correspondence that was received by the city, by FEMA, to update, because since the last time they did these maps, areas that they recognize may be subject to a higher level of flooding have changed. So part of it is readopting and having the maps be modernized. The other are standards, building standards, and such. And I can give you, if you like, I mean, I don't have it now, but I can certainly print it out between now and the regular meeting. Kind of the actual changes, because the NJDEP and the model ordinance kind of shows you what the changes are. And our ordinance tracked pretty much the prior model ordinance from 10, 15 years ago. So again, there's all sorts of changes regarding proper handling of construction issues mostly, and what you can build and where you can build and how you can build, to make sure that damage isn't caused. Because if you think about it, federal government is getting somewhat frustrated because they insure, there's flood insurance, right? And the same buildings get flooded around the country again and again and again. And so they finally said, we don't have the money to be able to afford this, so we need to make sure that if we're going to offer flood insurance, that it makes some sense to the taxpayer.
So the copy that we got to review had a few things that were highlighted. So you're telling me there were more changes than just the highlighted ones? I assume that those.
Well, I don't know what you mean by the.
Well, if you look in your docket, I tried to read it, and
Let's
there's
see.
pages like where you see things like this. So I assume those were the changes. See where the highlight is? See where the
No,
grayed out
no,
area? You
that's
don't see that?
I see that. That was something that our engineer put in. That's
So
not.
this is not a change, we would have no idea when we read this what changed?
I can give you an idea, as I said, if you want to see the specifics before the meeting, I can print them out for you. I thought I had them with me, but I don't.
I mean, I
But
think-
again, there's a large number
Right,
of
but
changes.
going forward, I think before we vote on things, we need to know what we're voting on.
Yeah.
And I think if you could just give us like a high-level summary page of what the changes are,
I
that
mean,
would.
there are 100, I mean, it would take hours now. I mean, there are 100 changes. I mean, again, this is.
For
the-
those of us that are involved in
Yeah.
building, I mean, there's obviously building standard changes, so,
Yeah.
John, I'm even thinking, does the planning board need to be made aware of some of this?
Well, I mean, the planning board will have to be made aware because the planning board
So you're
is
gonna
the,
have to find out.
is the appellate
Right, so you're gonna have
agency.
to-
If the construction official enforces, then
So
the.
my point is, you're gonna have to be able to tell somebody what changed. I just think that we as a council should know what changed before we're asked to vote on it.
Well,
That's my concern.
yes. Well, I mean, again, we are essentially, every municipality in the state of New Jersey is basically required to adopt this ordinance or a form thereof if it wants to have flood insurance.
We
So,
should still know what it is, especially those of us that are involved with building and development and the planning board, zoning board. Does it need to, is it just a document that's gonna go to them? Is there some kind of minimal training they should have? I mean, what is it that we're now going to be holding people to a higher standard that we haven't been before? Like at a high level, to me, some of the things that look like is, minimum elevation and like minimum of 1 foot change to elevation above the flood hazard lane. If you do 25% of a reno based on a flooding area, or if you do 50% of a reno outright, I mean, what was it before? Was it the same? Has it now changed from 30% to 50%? Was it now at least a foot? Now, is it, what, we don't know. So we have no idea what it was before and what it is now. So when we're discussing and reviewing these kinds of plans, we need to know that.
well, hang on one second here. Let's see if I can get this opened.
I mean, I'm fine with introducing it, but my advice to the rest of the council is we should not move forward with this until we at least have that documentation.
Well, he'll have time from the introduction.
Oh, I mean,
to
and I would.
But we should know that.
No, we should know all the
It's
information.
introduced.
Yeah.
What
I
we
mean,
need, Steve, is a synopsis of exactly.
You would,
Changes there.
I mean,
High level, doesn't
yeah,
have
I
to
mean,
be
it's
every
highly,
very
I mean,
detailed.
we would need our I mean, we've been consulting with Suburban Engineering. If that's how you feel, I would recommend,
The planning board's gonna have to have it,
bringing-
somebody's gonna have to have it.
yeah.
We're gonna need
have
it
to
anyway,
do it.
because we have to pass it up the ladder, down the ladder.
I mean, I would recommend bringing the engineer in because this is, a very technical, set of changes. But again,
The state didn't do that? The state didn't give an overview?
I mean, the state has given sort of general overviews of, the changes and why they need to be made, but,
I'm
for,
not even asking why, we just wanna understand,
I mean,
if we're
can I-
now judging criteria
They
for
go off
building
the beaten
standards, we
path
have
there,
to.
we
yeah,
have.
I mean, I'll give you an example, because I have the state of New Jersey's, ordinance in here. I mean, one of the things that they've talked about doing, for example, the changes, in certain flood zones, when you have new construction and substantial improvement, the lowest floor is supposed to be elevated. Well, they want to make sure that the utilities, so electrical, heating, ventilating, air conditioning, is placed not in an area that's going to flood, which, obviously makes some sense. So
It would be very
those are the kind of
simple. It's just
technical
a spreadsheet
changes.
saying before and after.
Right.
If
Of the
I
high-level
could I
things-
ask Joe, we have a development attorney right here.
Yeah, he may or may not even be aware.
Are you aware of all the floodplain changes, Joe? They're substantial?
They're numerous, some are minor, some are not
But
minor.
is that something that could be put into, floodplains for dummies for us to look at, basically?
Yeah, I think so. If you do a chart.
Do a chart, what it was and what it is now, that's all we really need. And we should be able to have that.
For the purpose of avoiding the damage that occur when a lot of these things are located in the floodplain, not elevated.
Right.
Well, I mean, once we make it our ordinance, it's our responsibility to make sure before we approve something that it conforms.
That's correct. It
So
applies
I
to,
think we need to know what it is.
yeah, new construction and substantial addition.
Right.
Yeah, and the construction official is going to have to be, as the administrator of this, and he's always been in our ordinances, he is aware of this, and he will certainly, be the one who will have to be fully aware of the
You might
changes.
be the
But
one that has to tell us what it is.
Yeah, or
Suburban?
Neglia.
well, Suburban is the firm that has been, involved in assisting in this review. So, Darren Phil from that
Planning board
firm
engineer.
is
rather.
the one.
The planning board
who's been-
engineer is the one that's gonna have to
This might
include
be
it in
more
his
up
review
Arcadis's
material.
alley.
No, but when Greg reviews the stuff,
Right,
he's gonna have to know to review it to the new ordinance thing.
all right. So
Okay.
just introduce it.
But again, we do have, I'm happy to do that, but if we do not adopt this at the next meeting, we will be suspended from the flood insurance program. So, this
Just
is.
make
I have
sure
no
we-
problem doing it, I just think we need
make
the
sure we get it done.
information. And if it was that much of an importance and as such a short schedule, we should have had that information tonight, that's all I'm saying.
What do we got next? Number 4,
Okay.
bus shelter installations.
Number 4 is the bus shelter. Once they are purchased and installed, we are required to maintain them. The 2 bus shelters that are being added to our inventory is right across from City Hall, basically where Dean parks. Across the lot, there's a bench there. They're gonna put a covered
Okay,
bench there for they're not moving the bus stops, they're just installing 2 shelters. And the other one's on State Street southbound at Passaic Street, mid-block.
Mom, we gotta buy them.
We're not,
Oh,
we're not.
just have to approve.
We just have
We
to
only have to
maintain
maintain them.
it. We have to
Maintain.
They're
maintain
putting them in, we just maintain them.
Just to-
So
I
there's,
thought we was buying them.
no,
Can I say something? Is 2 bus stops, one on Essex Street that we moved, and one on First Street in front of New Hope Church. It's just a bus stop, but the people sit on the church lawn, they sit on the church door, and on
Where's that one?
New Hope,
On First Street?
on First Street, right across from the splash park. And on Essex Street, up the street from Pizza Hut, they sit on these people's lawn, on the grass, on the lawn.
I know that one. I've seen them there. Yeah.
We need to do something about that.
Either we
bus
gotta
stop.
get a shelter or move it to where they can't sit on people's property like that. We did that with Mr. Jackson. We moved the bus, member? Moved the bus stop
Yes,
from,
we did.
That's between Badan, the corner of Badan and First Street, that bus stop's right in front of the church, and people sit on the bushes, on the church step. If they can move it up a little bit.
okay, I got it. Next is handicap parking at Fashini Park. There was some consideration because of the use of Fashini Park that we need to increase handicap parking. So essentially, we're adding 4 spots.
I think there's a handicap spot in Fashini Park.
I
How
believe
many are
that-
there now? Are there
I
any?
believe there are 2.
they're in the main spots over by the ball field.
So there's 2 now, so we're gonna go from 2 to
Can't be.
6?
That ball field is just.
No,
going
not
down.
the asphalt one, on the street, going
By
towards
10.
Boulder Fields, as you, towards Boulder City.
I've never
There's
saw it.
spots there. I think there's some there.
So they're adding, the approval will add 4 handicap spaces at Fashini Park. I would be fibbing if I told you, well, let's see here. Domofowski Engineering received the attached establishment of 4 handicap parking for Fashini Park near Field 8. We visited the suggested locations at the end of the parking row near Field 8 from point 58 degrees west of the telephone pole 2671 located in the southeast corner of the park. So we're adding 4 handicap parking, which would,
Does it say if we had any there?
we didn't have any previously
There's
in
none
there
there.
at all, none. So we've gone from 2 to 6.
Are they all gonna be next to each other?
I don't have that. I don't know if they're exactly side by side, but they're gonna be in a block, so these people located the southeast corner of Fashini Park. First parking spot will start at the point that encompasses the next 8 feet west thereof. I'm just reading degrees and situations.
They're in succession according
Yes.
to what the
Okay.
ordinance says.
Okay, thank you.
And they're van accessible, at least from what I see.
Okay, number 6 is the Bergen County American Legion Centennial. This is a supporting ordinance for 100 years of service for the Bergen County American Legion. I didn't think there was much questions about that.
No, but I'd like to, we just did a hometown hero through the congressman, where we carried his animals. But seeing him again today made me think of, because I thought of it back then, we have a real-time war hero, war veteran,
Oh,
World War II veteran, Lee Darminio, Normandy Beach, Purple Heart, you know, a couple of other nice ribbons to wear on his chest, that is really deserving of some recognition. And I know Mike Melfi, who handles our veteran affairs, ex-mayor Mike Melfi. He's associated with the Hackensack American Legion, and I've already spoken to him about doing something for Lee Darminio. So maybe we could tie something into this resolution along with him too.
okay. Debbie and I will work on that. Okay, next is the Riverwalk. We've been round and around now. This is, we've conversed on this, but we have to come up. Hopefully Albert doesn't get a vote. So the issue is Riverwalk, concrete, pavers, asphalt. I thought we eliminated asphalt the last time, but rumor has it may be squeaking back. This is like watching a horse race. Albert says he has no dog in the fight here. So in either case, somebody from the council by majority has to pick concrete or pavers, because we gotta put these standards, because as these developers come in, we gotta hold them to those standards.
Concrete's
Somebody's
gonna
gotta
last
decide.
much longer, it's much more maintenance free.
Yeah, concrete, I go with concrete.
Can you do a combo or no?
Can't combine them, no.
Like certain areas?
Maybe you gotta
Issue where
put,
there's concrete down the middle and there's pavement.
Like Hoboken has that.
The
Concrete.
concrete doesn't expand, the blacktop expands much back and forth much more. That's where you get the cracking and the
We're not talking
heaving.
about the black, we're talking about a combo of concrete pavers.
Like alternate.
maybe the expensive,
Like where the concrete, yeah, but we're not paying for it. Where the concrete goes down the middle and there's, like we're doing.
But you have to pay for it when they rip up or anything.
maintenance,
Yeah, but the pavers.
It's actually
you just lift
cheaper.
them out. That's cheaper.
Maintenance is hard.
How is
It's
cheaper?
cheaper.
you got a plant they
Cheaper to
growing in
fix the
between the
pavement than it is
pavers.
You see Main Street, the pavers on Main Street?
They
Those aren't
didn't
real,
do a good
those are,
job.
that's stamped
They
concrete,
didn't do a
that's not
good
even
job.
pavers, I don't think.
But we ain't, that ain't been fixed either.
But-
Who's gonna fix these if they break or
Well,
whatever?
what's there now on the adjacent properties?
Some of them have tracks, whatever.
Yeah, the trucks didn't hold up too well
No.
during our fireworks thing, so
No,
it broke all that. So
did it?
yeah, so we have to fix some of that. So Jackie goes, don't come back without an answer. So I'm stuck in the
But
middle.
the
I'm a
ones
man
that
without
did
a
it,
compass.
Ted, the people that did it already, what does it look like? What's there now? Because we want it to look continuous.
There's Albert, what would you say is the majority, please step up here for a moment. I'm gonna introduce our economic development, and he's gonna school us on what the majority, because he spent more time up and down that than I have.
Right.
Thank you,
So
Albert.
it's, my thinking on this, for whatever it's worth, is that you are making sort of a policy decision in your choice of materials. If you decide you want to do concrete, yes, you will have something that lasts a long time. But you've essentially said the only use you want to have is for people to walk on it, because people don't run, runners don't run on asphalt. Behind FDU, all the way from Route 4, all the way past the Rothman Center, all the way up to just about the border of Johnson Park is asphalt. Then it turns into Trex. And as you mentioned, with the problem with Trex is especially the Trex that we have there now, that material isn't even made anymore. So you're never going to match color or thickness in the boards you get. So you're at the whim of whatever supplier you get. Concrete lasts a long time, but concrete is not maintenance free either. I mean, at some point, if you have a tree that's growing along the river, which I expect you will, you're going to have to deal with concrete being uprooted too. So I will just say, if you look at Saddle River Park throughout Glenrock, Ridgewood, Paramus, it's asphalt because they want people to be able to ride bikes, roller skate, skateboard, and run. If you have concrete, you're probably going to have a long-lasting concrete walkway without the opportunity to do much more than walk. So that's my thinking. I realize
What do
it's
you
not,
think is best?
you're asking me my personal preference because I run and you know my daughter rides bikes. You can ride bike on concrete. You can ride bike on concrete. You can't skateboard. You can't use, like, now you're seeing a lot more in the way of scooters, you know, e-bikes. So that's, I think, a real question that you want to have with your engineer. But in my estimation, it's about who you anticipate using this and how you're going to limit usage of it based on materials. So you know.
What's the average width of the walkways?
That's all.
So I think 15 feet is what we say in our, I forget if it's 10 or 15 feet, but just based on memory, I think it's for asphalt, I'm saying anywhere between 10 and 12 feet, but enough for two runners side by side to run past each other in opposite directions is typically what I see. And there are a lot of runners up at FDU. They run all the time. There is especially, you know, when school is in session. So if the idea is to extend that and have a path that goes all the way down to the southern end and comes back, where you might be able to get in a 5K on a Riverwalk.
What's your opinion on pavers for runners?
Pavers are essentially concrete, right? So I think they have a little bit more give than concrete. I mean, a solid block of concrete, you know, your typical 4x8 before it breaks up, that's the worst possible surface I think you can run on. Pavers, I think, have a little bit more give because they're broken up a little bit.
That's uneven.
But it's uneven, so you're not going to roller skate or skateboard or any of that.
Asphalt is the best.
Either. I mean, I guess
Cheaper.
if you're gonna have a walkway, you know you're gonna have to maintain it. The easiest thing to maintain, I think, or the cheapest thing to maintain, is over time is probably asphalt. That's what our streets are made of. I mean, you have concrete streets.
At the streets.
Yeah, well,
I think what I said from the beginning.
that's just me. And again, not an easy choice.
Concrete or, the pavers sound like it's out, so I guess it's
Yeah,
concrete or.
concrete or asphalt.
Yeah.
I go with asphalt. That's it.
Vote?
I still like I like the combination pavers and concrete.
You'd like the combination of pavers and concrete?
We're gonna have 5 different.
I'm gonna write these down because I know I'm not gonna
I'll
get
just point out what our
Because
esteemed
in Ridgewood,
consultant mentioned here. Pavers are also tripping hazards for people.
Yeah, because they're uneven.
Once a paver comes loose, then you got a liability issue.
And we do, and by the way, it's not hard to, you go over behind FDU where they did happen to use pavers, where they have the ecological signs up where people fish. It's a mess. They're all over the place. They're broken up. I think there has to be 400 pavers missing. So I would definitely stay away from pavers, stamped or otherwise. But, you know, Ted, I don't know if I helped you, if I just
You
complicated it.
just sunk me, but it's
Sorry.
okay.
But I'll vote for concrete.
Asphalt. Okay, let's go.
Wait,
Wait, I gotta write
you
this
said
down.
concrete with pavers. Did you change your tune now that you heard about Albert?
No.
No, she's concrete with pavers, I'm concrete. Dave? Concrete or asphalt or pavers?
I'm on tar, right?
Yeah, asphalt like the street.
Like what's in the street?
Tar.
Asphalt.
Gosh,
Yeah.
Asphalt.
As long as
Leo's
it's
asphalt.
hydrated.
I'm a longevity guy, I like concrete.
Okay.
No,
Now we're.
Looks like concrete wins.
only because I see asphalt.
It's not, it's more expensive to
Listen,
put down, but we're not paying for it to
I'm
put
a
down.
golfer. I'm on cart paths all the time, and these asphalt cart paths, anybody who's golfed sees them, they break up terribly.
Leo, what did you pick?
Asphalt.
Sorry?
Asphalt.
Asphalt.
You got 2 asphalt, 2 concrete, and 1 concrete with pavers.
So nobody broke the tie.
Yeah, but the
If you
pavers,
listen to Albert, Albert's gonna break the
Put the
tie.
concrete down. Put the concrete. I mean,
So now you change to concrete? Concrete, asphalt.
sorry Leo, sorry Steph,
Don't worry
I
about
think
it.
we'll hold up the best.
just get it done.
It will hold up the best.
It will. I know. I look at my driveway where my apron is concrete and I'm always redoing the rest of my driveway. That's asphalt. It's a constant mess.
My
And
my
that
next door neighbor's got a concrete
boy,
driveway.
It's phenomenal.
40 years, it's still there,
Yeah,
hasn't touched
driveway.
it, it's still there.
It's great.
Okay. Signs prohibiting bicycles on city sidewalks.
There were sort of signs, you said?
Signs. We're gonna add, oh, strike that. Where'd my little arrow go? There has been numerous complaints of people riding bicycles on city sidewalks. Councilman Battaglia has kind of led this charge. So we're going to install bicycle in Spanish and English and start enforcing this. Because Leo is 100% correct. Some of these people come flying down these sidewalks. Somebody walks out of one of these stores, they could seriously hurt somebody because they just seem to be, you know, head down, earbuds in, zooming around here and going there. I don't know whether they're a delivery service
Hudson
or.
Street is really bad. Really bad.
So we'll be installing signs. If you see targeted areas that you think need a little more signage or a little more enforcement, just send me an email and.
The problem is, my question is, for a bicyclist to see a sign on the sidewalk, if he's driving on the sidewalk, he's not looking up.
Put on the sidewalk. You can paint it, couple here and there, you know.
Because you can't put them low either, because someone's
Right.
gonna clip themselves and get
But
hurt.
listen, when you start enforcing, and then the police officer is gonna be walking in Main Street, they see somebody in the bike, and then talk to him, look at the sign,
That's the key word, Leo, enforcement.
enforce.
If we don't enforce it,
Education and enforcement.
It's just an ordinance if it's not.
You can put in the end in each corner, right? Like a little, you can paint a bicycle, and then they will understand.
Okay, last on my agenda is the relocation of the sewer easement on the record property. This, Steve Kleiman will fill you in on anything notable, but most notable to correct a typographical error that reflects where agreed upon a 20-foot wide easement in the area of the relocated line increased from 15 feet.
And again, this does get into redevelopment, which is not my area of expertise and is highly technical. But essentially, as I understand it, as part of the record redevelopment site, I mean, for many, many years, obviously this was used for a different purpose. The city had a sewer line underneath there, and we had an easement to operate that sewer line to be able to get in there if there was an issue or a concern. Because that site is the site of a very, very large redevelopment project, that sewer line easement, the line, I believe, will have to be moved somewhat to be able to fit what is being planned there. And so the easement documents have to be revised and updated to reflect the proper layout of the new line. So this resolution is to essentially accept the new easement to be able to update the property documentation and to move forward so that they can go and begin building, because taking care of this is really a critical step in being able to continue with this development. So one of the things that Ted talked about is the original easement was 15 feet wide. However, current standards, according to our engineer, is 20 feet. So we are going to address that issue to make sure that the easement is 20 feet wide, and our engineer does advise that that's sufficient if we were to need to use to get to the sewer. Because these things are dug pretty deep, so you may need to get in there with an excavator if you have a problem. So 15 feet just isn't enough. The resolution is subject to final approval by me as well as our assigned engineer, because we're just finalizing some of the details to make sure that we get this right. So there's going to have to be some updated an updated map that we need to have for our records, for example, and I know that the developer is working on that. So again, this by adopting this now, we assume that it should be able to be approved as written. If there are any substantive changes that are required, then we won't sign off on it, and we'll bring it back to you for further adoption. But the goal is, we think this review can take place in the next few days. They can get started sooner, and this way they don't have to wait until an August meeting, assuming everything is copacetic according to all of our professionals. They're not sitting around waiting for another 3 months with their equipment and everything to be able to start to physically address this issue. So that's basically what we're trying to do for them, is to help them move this along and get this project up and running, and obviously all the benefits that it will bring to the city once it's completed, and generating revenue for them, and will generate revenue for us. I don't know if, I know counsel for the developer is here, if he has any, if he agrees with what I said, or if there's anything that
Just
he
have a
felt
question.
would
It
be
feels like the proposed line
necessary.
goes right along the entrance roadway, is that correct, Joe?
Yeah, it runs, there's an updated map that just came in.
Yes, I saw that, so.
The easement it runs parallel, part of the easement runs parallel to the BCUA sewer line, so that's in the middle of the property. This is really a line that comes in from River Street to the main line, which then connects into the transmission line of BCUA. It's only a part of it, some 50 or 150 feet that is being relocated. The rest, and that's going to have the 20-foot wide easement for access. The rest of it remains the same, and the restated easement gives the city absolute right over all of the property to access its easement. It's not limited only
Right.
to 15 feet.
No harm, no fouls.
Anything, in your opinion, did I relay the circumstances
Yes,
accurately?
The 20-foot wide width is going only for the relocated, not the rest of it, because that's
Right.
already been cast, yes.
The question, this morning, we discussed some of this at our redevelopment meeting.
18 inches.
And there were basically two questions that came up, and we just got this revised copy as we were walking in. So-
Yes, there was a revision made at your request, that's in
Right,
there.
right. So, there were two things, right? One, in here, does it say that it's changed from 15 to 20 feet?
It's
I
in,
didn't see that.
it's in in the attachment,
So the
there's the
attachment,
attached deed, because the original refers to the original 15 feet wide easement, but if you look at the resolution refers to, and let me just pull this up if
Do
you
we have
don't
a
mind.
copy of the paperwork that says it's now 20 feet?
Yes, it's, I had attached it here, and so we have an amended and restated deed of easement, and, it's actually it says, instead of 15 feet, it says as attached on Exhibit A, so I believe that is the, the area of the new description is easement A, so I believe that does reflect the 20 feet is the revision.
So the 20 feet is there, and then the other question was to remove the fact, because we talked about this at the planning board meeting as well, Mr. Bezerra, right, that until the Arcata study is complete, we're not really sure what's gonna happen to some of that. So the 18-foot may or may not change.
So it's currently 15 inches, it's going to 18 inches. By the way, I just received a copy of the flow charts that were sent to the city today with capacity studies, and I suspect your engineers will be looking at that as well. Hopefully they will do that quickly, because that's the first thing that has to be done, is the sewer. The sewer has to be relocated before they start construction.
Right, but that was the change tonight, right? You took the 18 out
Yes.
and just said,
Right, I
subject to the
understand.
final decision by Arcata, and you're okay with that, Mr. Bezerra?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear,
So those two changes were.
Yeah, and to be clear, to make sure that everything's correct in terms of the surveys and documentation, this resolution does not become effective until our engineer, who told us that he wants 20 feet, is satisfied that the language, protects and covers the circumstances that we're faced with. So we understand that needs to be clearly stated in there, and to the extent that there is any issue with that, we will address that with the professionals to make sure that the line is what it is. And as I said, I know the original map that was provided by their engineer Langen had the 15 foot, and I believe I saw in my email a short time ago, they've updated that map to show the 20 feet. And if that's the case, then we should be good. But we will reconfirm everything once we have all the technical. And again, if there's a problem, then, our engineer and myself will say, hey, look, we're not there. We need to readopt this with changes. So we'll be on top of
We're
that.
doing this exhaustive study as part of the changes from the medical center
Yeah.
and the fact that there's a whole change in the sewer separation and how that may or may not impact and
No,
whether.
there's two distinctions, so just to be perfectly clear, the area that's going of the easement that's going from 15 feet to 20 feet is the area from River Street to the connector line. The rest of it is remaining the same because it runs parallel to the BCUA easement, which is 90 feet, which gives you access.
So we're not
The
changing
sewer
that at all.
line, the sewer line is different than the stormwater line, which is what you're referring to.
What I'm worried about.
The sewer line only deals with the sewage that's coming in now and expanding it for future expansion. That's what it is.
Okay.
Stormwater, which we'd like to deal with, as you know, is a separate issue. That's not
Okay.
part of this
So the
one.
stormwater does not enter into this
No.
easement or anyway?
This
Okay.
this is the city's sewer line. It's straight sewage only. And it ties into the BCUA line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This would complete the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you.
There was one other thing that I thought was going to appear on the agenda, if you have a second. I mean, I can raise it, which was the criminal background check issue. We can discuss that today or save it for the next meeting, if you want to.
I thought you had that on your,
It did on me.
closed?
I was
Got it
there.
here while we came in.
I don't know if it was on close or not. But no, we need to it needs to be done because,
We definitely.
Yeah, because
We're talking about the task force?
no,
Yeah.
background check.
I mean, it really would be a kind of a.
Before we appoint someone to the
It
zoning.
would- This would be an open session discussion, which is why I raised it, which would simply be.
Well, let's make what is the issue with doing a background check?
So there's not. I mean, my office was asked to prepare, to go through and prepare an ordinance that would provide, criminal, we can do non-fingerprint, apparently criminal background checks.
I got fingerprinted to become mayor.
For our various boards and commissions. And we do have an ordinance that we can introduce in the next meeting if the council wants to proceed forward with it, that changes the city code in each of the various sections that deals with, volunteers for whatever it is, the Shade Tree Commission, that they, was part of their application process, they would go through a criminal background check, and if they had been convicted of crimes as set forth in New Jersey law, that would disqualify them from board membership. If that's something the council wishes to proceed with, we do have that prepared. I didn't have a draft to hand out today, but it's a fairly simple ordinance. It just simply says, hey, look, we're going to conduct as part of boards this check if the council wishes to
I don't know whether
consider
there's
that.
different levels of checks, but, the zoning board is a quasi-judicial type of board, which is a little more heavy-duty than the Shade Tree Commission.
But we do run virtually every coach and everybody that's on staff that works with these kids. I really don't see
Why do we
it.
have to change the ordinance to do this? That's what I'm trying to.
Because I guess it's not, if it doesn't exist, you just can't say, well, we're gonna send her, but we're not gonna send
There's
him.
no provision for it at this
Right,
point.
that's-
We haven't been doing it, there's no provision for it. Not every place, this isn't necessarily a common thing. Though they did pass a law that says if you are a Board of Education member now, by law, you do have to have a
Well,
criminal
coaches are mandatory.
background check, and there's various things. The question is, would the council, like to consider an ordinance that would cover all city boards as opposed to, just, people who work with children, for example?
And we have had one board where we had to remove.
That's why we're on the gun shop.
So I
We do
think
this.
that we might be prudent to explore this.
I guess you want to look at the process and the cost and who's going to put the cost in.
I think the issue is, do we have to do it for all boards, or can we be
No,
specific?
I think you could make a rational distinction that certain boards require it and certain boards do not. I mean, you know, there's various,
The chances of something happening as far as financial issue or something could happen on the zoning board. It's not gonna happen in the shade tree commission. It's not gonna happen in the rent control. It's not gonna happen in, you know. I just don't see it necessary for
Every board.
shade tree commissions to be fingerprinted and checked.
But I would say zoning and planning
Environmental.
board, too.
Well,
Planning board,
One
but
issue
those are.
was the shade tree, right, or environmental?
Environment.
Yeah.
Environmental.
so I mean, if you want to
But
think
even
of,
though it was an uncomfortable
But there-
situation,
About the
there
record?
was
There
no
are
way
different-
that could cause harm to the city. We're
Right.
looking at
To protect.
protecting the city because you're making
I
decisions.
think you have to
that-
measure the exposure that the city has.
Right.
Remember,
I think
remember
that-
when I said that
and
I
you
spoke
may
to
be
the,
able to do that on a case.
to the officer?
yes,
And he said that they, if someone wants a, letter of good standing, that there's different levels that they can check. That the letter of good standing that the police department would write for this guy, they just do a standard LexisNexis, I guess, check.
There's a triple I check that they can do, NCIC, that has all levels. So every person who's ever arrested criminally gets an SBI number,
Okay.
State Bureau
So they could-
Identification Number. So I have an SBI number because I have a firearms ID card. They're also SBI numbers. But if you're arrested, so the minute they go into the computer and they run Ted Ehrenberg and they look there and they go, ding, that number comes up. If there's not a gun permit after that, there's something else behind door number 2.
But isn't
Just how
that
it
something that you could just, that would be simple enough to do? And if it came up that there was something there, then go further?
Well, the point is, it's just a screen. If you've done this job long enough, you know that if there's something behind door number 2, you don't have to look any further. You just say, there's an issue here, and we stop there. But
Yeah.
that's up to the mayor.
and there's,
I
all
think that the real issue is there's some boards that are just advisory boards. They really have no power. We're talking about boards that are decision-making boards. And I think that's where we have to protect ourselves.
Then the criminal history on the garden club doesn't make any
Planning
sense.
and
But the
zoning.
one
Rec board's
issue
advisory,
that we had
environmental's an
was an
advisory.
advisory.
yeah, that's right,
board.
if you remember, we had a situation with somebody that
Didn't
we,
make decisions.
that got removed.
I understand,
Yeah.
but.
But that was a
uncomfortable,
contemporaneous
but
circumstance.
There was no harm to the city. What we're concerned about is the decision-making boards could have a negative impact on the city.
Got it.
And I mean, we can certainly go back and look at, you know, if there's individual boards that are concerned. I mean, some places, you know, I've seen an ordinance where they designate to the administrator, well, if someone comes up positive, the administrator has the right to say, you know, to review it and say, well, you know, look, given the nature of the particular, you know, criminal history, because look, you know, some people sometimes early in their lives, you know, make mistakes and, you know, may still want to be involved in civic life 20, 25 years later, where you have some sort of procedure where, you know, it's not automatically disqualifying, where there's some room to say, hey, look, you know, I got a drug conviction 20 years ago, but now I'm a, you know, a good person in the community and, you know, I should be allowed to participate on a board if you go down that route. So, you know, I know this was raised by the clerk as something that, you know, should be looked at. There are nuances to it, so I would just simply say, you know, if you have any direction for us and, you know, where you want to go with it, we can certainly, you know, take that into account in coming up with an ordinance that you would want.
Legally, does the city have liability if somebody that's just advisory capacity does something? Like if that is.
No, I mean, no. I mean, look, I mean, absent, you know, somebody on a board, you know, that would seem to be, you know, extremely unlikely. I mean, again, if you know, again, if you're dealing with people who deal with finances, you know, there are fiduciary duties and things where you probably want to make sure that somebody you have, you know, handling your checkbook hasn't been convicted of embezzlement. But, you know, simply because somebody, you know, has some minor offense and they're on a you know, environmental commission, you know, the odds of any sort of significant liability arising from that are, you know, pretty minimal.
Next.
All right.
That's all I have.
Okay,
Open to the public.
need a motion to open to the public, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Anybody from the public would like to come up and speak? Please come to the podium, give your name and address to the clerk. Seeing no one from the public, motion to close.
Second.
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
We're still shocked up there. Only shocked. All in favor? Aye, none opposed.
Now do we need a motion to go into executive?
Motion to go to closed session.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none?
Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to discuss certain actions under section 7B7 and 7B8 of the Open Public Meetings Act which pertain to matters falling within attorney-client privilege, ongoing litigation and personnel matters concerning the employment of a current or prospective public employee. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack is of the opinion that such circumstances may presently exist, and whereas the mayor and council wishes to discuss the following issues: personnel matters, ongoing litigation, matters involving attorney-client privilege, matters involving the purchase, lease, or acquisition of real property, any pending or anticipated litigation or contract negotiations. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to exclude the public from this discussion. The outcome of the discussion will be disclosed within 90 days, or at such time in the interest of the city do not require confidentiality.
I will be raising a workers' compensation matter involving the claimant Lorenzo Lett, and then I'm sure the council may have questions about ongoing litigation, and we'll update in terms of what we talked about at the end of closed session.
Okay. See everybody at 8 o'clock. Good evening, everybody. Madam Clerk?
We need a motion to close the executive session.
Okay, need a motion, please?
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed?
And then a motion to close the cow.
Yeah,
Motion-
just one thing, we did talk about the Rioto case briefly, so let's just add that to the list of litigation that was discussed in closed session.
Yes, thank you. Motion to close the cow.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed?